Hi everyone, it's Aaron again. We are just 2 days away from the Chinese Lunar New Year celebrations, and for all our Chinese friends, I wish all of you 新年快乐, 恭喜发财, 年年有余, and 身体健康. Okay, so as promised, I'm going to go through with you today on the HDB landscape of Singapore. Some of its changes in 2019 is performance, right? And what are some of the implications and impacts of its policy changes, and also maybe some of its supply. How is it going to affect your decision making, either if you're looking for your first property in Singapore, be it a BTO or a resale property, or if presently you already have a HDB property and not so sure what your options are, and whether you should hold that property or offload that to another property. This will be some of the insights that I will be giving you that I hope that it actually assists you in your decision making. Okay, so some of the things that I'm going to speak about has already been highlighted heavy last year, especially some of the major changes. So I'll just briefly give you a recap, and if you need to have more details on it, please go up to Google. You can find all the relevant tables and some Q&A questions that are actually online. All right, so one thing that I want to speak about is I feel is very important is the change in the CPF usage and HDB housing loan. This is in May 2019, right? So in a nutshell, these are some things to take note is 95 and less than 95. What this means is that if you are buying a property together as a family, they will take the younger age. So the balance lease of that property plus the younger age of that purchaser add up together has to be at least minimum 95 and above. If you do not hit the 95 mark, and this affects not just the HDB market but also the private market, if you don't hit the 95 mark, you're penalized in two things. Number one, your loans and your CPF usage. So you might not take that 90% loan, maybe you couldn't get 80% loan, all right? So what this means is that if you have anything which is less than 95 years combined, what happens is that your loan, you'll be compromised. You will not be able to enjoy the full 90% loan that you could get if you are buying an HDB property. And this is also for HDB and private properties. If let's say you also be compromised in terms of your CPF usage. So what this means is that if you took on a loan, for example, from a bank for 30 years for a private property or 25 years for HDB property, and depending on how many or what was the age combined at the time, if for example your shortfall of 10 or 15 years means instead of 95 you got 80, what happens is that there will be a day maybe in the 10 or 11 year, you could do your own calculations, right, whereby you receive a letter from the CPF stating that you have already reached your CPF limit, and therefore your following month's installment you have to finance it fully by cash, no more CPF. Okay, right? So these are some of the things that you want to look out for when you buy your next property in 2020. Right? Okay, the next thing that I thought was also important for you all to note was that this was another major change in September 2019, and this was actually the increase of the grants given to singles and also to the HDB families to assist them to purchase their properties, right? You have an increase of grant of $50,000, right? They also increase your income ceiling to be eligible for HDB grant if you have not much money in your CPF. If you're working for the past 12 months continuously, you're also given another $80,000 maximum for your of additional housing grant, right? And they also encourage you to stay near to your parents and reward you by giving another 30K grant. And of course, both of you would then be obligated to stay and not sell your property for the next 5 years. Or if your parents would want to sell the property, they could, but they got to still stay around the same 4-kilometer radius, right, from where you purchase your property. Okay, so this is just great because the government is doing its best to reduce the cost of living in Singapore, and they really wanted all of you to be able to own a property for yourself. Okay, right. Now let's go into the performance of HDB property in 2019. Right, so we have come up with a flash estimates already for HDB. For the first quarter, we dropped by 0.3%. Second quarter, we are also dropped by 0.2%. You can see over here, and overall growth is actually just 0.1% for 2019. So it's kind of flat, all right? Bringing us to take a look at the price index here, right? We are kind of flat, I would say, from 2015 onwards, in my opinion. From this period to this period, we kind of mellowed down. It's kind of stabilized, going down. But if I were you, I already felt that this graph has to be read in a different context. So in my opinion, for this graph, you take a look at it, it actually measures the entire HDB resale property index in Singapore. It does not differentiate between the older properties or the newer properties, all right? So on the ground, what we are feeling is that for the newer properties, obviously the price in terms of their returns on the purchase price is so much greater. We are looking at MOP clusters last year where many purchases even for a 3-room flat that got in your property at a time for $225,000 is able to sell at $450,000. Okay, that was early 2019. But when you throw all this in together, for the older properties, we are looking at a decline of almost 10 to 15%. All right, some properties which could sell for 300 plus or even a 3-room property only exchange hands at $265,000 after a year of marketing. All right, so this just gives you an overall view, but do take note that you have to understand which category your properties are, and if you think that the market remains flat and your property, the older ones, is still worth the same price as 2 years ago, then that might not be a very accurate gauge you have when you want to market your property. Okay, right? So moving on, we'll be looking at the estimated number of MOP units. Okay, what is this all about? This just tells you that these numbers that I am showing you, it actually tells you these are the units whereby they've already fulfilled their 5 years stay in their house and they are able to sell their property in the open market. All right, so you can see that the numbers actually increased after HDB started to increase a lot of construction into a lot of new houses, and it has kind of increased all the way here, right? From 2013, new properties, which is a 5-year-old property, there's only 1,000 over units in the market, has now increased up to last year 26,000, and we are seeing new supply coming in the market this year of 23,716, moving on to the following year and 2022 and even 2023. Okay, so what does this really mean to you? I personally feel that if today you are looking at a property and your thinking is that I intend to buy a BTO because I've seen past household or my friends who have made a good pot of gold over there, and I want to have the same type of desire of getting that first pot of gold for my HDB property because it's such a small capital down, right? I want you to be a bit more realistic, because at that time, what happens to these families is that it's very different to if you are going to buy it now, because you're going to look at the supply at that time. If you're going to buy a BTO today, you're only eligible to sell your property 9 years later. All right, so you compare 9 years later, does that really make sense for you? Because you still have to wait for the construction of the property plus 5-year stay mark, correct? So what happens to them is that at that time, why is it that this household could fetch such a good price for their property? Is because it is an undersupply of properties, new flats in a particular area. For example, if you compare the cash increase in terms of the price appreciation of a property in Tampines, which is a mature estate whereby there's so little supply of new properties here, compared to maybe a newer estate like Punggol or Sengkang area where there's so many supply of new properties, right? The performance is very different. So do not think that it'll be the same. And moving forward, if you get 9 years, you got to ask yourself at a time, if you look at an example of Tampines also, there's so many properties which are going to be in the market at Tampines North area, and those that are actually going for BTO exercise this year, all of them could be selling at that time. So we got to ask ourselves this question: is that buyers at that time, are they have many options to buy a property, or they're only limited to those few? And of course, if there's more supply, right, price will obviously come down. I'll show you in a short while later how some prices have actually changed just for this short 1 year, where something could go as high as $450,000 has actually dropped by 10% in the new cluster and now only exchanging hands for $400K. Okay, right. Next thing is to show you 2019. They again have launched a lot of properties, BTOs, right? Balance of sale flat, re-offer flats. Total, you're looking that they have released in 2019 is actually hang on. 22,751 units, right? So there are more and more units coming into the market, and one of the uniquely different thing about the Singapore market versus many other countries is this, is that our government is the biggest developer, controlling over more than 1 million of HDB units under their belt, all right? So what they could do when they control prices is like that. They will actually build a lot, control the price so that it doesn't overinflate, right? So they didn't want prices to be so expensive, something like they learned the lesson from Pinnacle at Duxton, right, where prices could go over $1 million. So they could have changed that in the past, but what they're doing right now is that they're going to press the price down for HDB so that it doesn't inflate too high. Yep. Okay, and for 2020, we have already launching this year in the pipeline. They're looking at 6,700 units. All right, you can see at the prices over here. Okay. So how has the resales numbers been doing for this couple of years? We are looking at, resale numbers means these are actually actual transactions in the market. We have moved from 2013, 18,000 unit exchange hands, going on all the way to we just got the numbers in today, right? We have done 23,714 units for 2019, and it's kind of the highest among all the years prior to it. Okay, why is this happening? It's for a simple reason. It's because many buyers are going to a more safe haven type of housing, and that is HDB, right? Where the price are not so expensive and they're able to get their first pot of gold, and they didn't want to and take advantage of grant especially, right? So because the private property market has actually gone up by quite a lot, and it's kind of risky if they didn't know what they are doing, okay? Now, I want to actually move on to just kind of pull these two charts together. You have seen the recent HDB chart already. I want to pull together the private price index chart for you to just kind of overlay it for you to have a look. So this is how it is. I tried to shift this as much as I can. So the blue color here indicates a private property. All right, this is a private property. And the red color will be the HDB property, right? Okay, so you can see that there's a huge gap over here where I think this is what the government really wants. They're really keeping HDB prices as affordable as possible. And for the private market, it has picked up again and moving on and increasing in terms of its price index. Right, so in a nutshell, what is really happening is so chaotic. You're meeting so many agents, and then it is just a mess, right? You do not know what you should be doing, right? But is there a silver lining for you to start off your purchase right? Does it even make sense to you, right? You're meeting many people asking you to sell your property, to invest in 2 properties. There's so many news articles on that. Last year, in fact, on what you should do with HDB property, all right? So I just want to show you just a few other things before I move on. If you're looking to buy an HDB nonetheless, I think in my opinion, you could consider this. I have pulled out something actually from HDB. This is their annual report. This is actually the annual report, and what are their personal, it's kind of like their master plan that they're actually looking into. All right, it tells you about, for me, I'm looking about the demand and supply. Of course, this is just one element that you should look at. There are other elements like the desirability of that area, the attractiveness of the estate, the location of the plot of land that you are looking at, right? So these are some of the things that you also consider. But I'm looking at the broad view of demand and supply in terms of a gauge. So let me just bring you to the screen. Here you'll be looking at, for example, this is how it looks like. Am-Mo-Kio town, right? This is the land. You just ignore that. I would like to bring attention to the dwelling units as of March 31st. There are 50,000 over units in Am-Mo-Kio under management, and they're looking for the projected ultimate dwelling units in Am-Mo-Kio, and this comprises of private also at 58,000, right? So if there is a spread that we are looking at of about only 8,000, and this is a brand new cluster over there, I would then put my money there, because I would know that in the end, at the end of the day, 5 years period, if I'm looking to sell a property, or I want to make sure that at least the value is sustainable in the longer term, and I know that there's not much competition in the area, right? This will make sense in comparison to maybe moving down. If you look at places such as Pongo, for example. Pongo, you're looking at present management of close to $50,000, but they are still in the works to maximize these areas all up to 96,000 units, right? So this is something that I might consider. Maybe I might not want to put my money there. If I want to buy a BTO, I'll put in something, like I said, whereby there is going to be a lesser number of dwellings, so I can have easier selling on my property in future. Okay. Earlier I was actually speaking to you about the prices that has actually changed over the times, right, for last year. So right, I'm going to the street directory view to just show you. As all of you know, if you're living in the East, one of the first few units that was actually, if you would have a bit of history, right, the first unit that actually was the crazy time with huge COVs and people are willing to pay crazy amount of dollars was actually the DBS as premier units in Tampines. And this area at the time was fetching a lot of money. The 5-room flats were going for about $700,000 to $800,000 for a DBSS. All right. This was the first unit, new housing in Tampines, whereby no one had any other choice but to buy that if they wanted to have a brand new flat to live in. Next came Tampines Greenleaf, which is just behind. This is a HDB flats in the first brand new HDB flats in Tampines for resale. This is a Greenleaf area. So early last year, when I was doing the sales of this property, like I was saying earlier, we were selling property. 3-room flats at $450, $440, 4-room flats going for about $600 plus to at least minimally $600K for 8th floor and above type of properties, right? Today we are looking at prices that has come down significantly. A 3-room flat is only transacting at about, say, $400K plus minus, all right, some as low as $380. And a 4-room flats generally, even the higher floor units at the 11th floor, 12th floor, are only asking now about $580K, and they're willing to deal at $560, $570. Units who are in the market asking for $600 plus is still stuck, and it's even for a few months, because what happens in the course of last year, many other new properties started to sprout out because they also made the MOP, right? If you move down towards the Temasek Poly, opposite you will actually see this small cluster of 4 blocks, which is a Tampines Green Terraces. For the Tampines Green Terraces, what happens is that these units, no doubt, it's been 5 years old only in the market. They are only commanding prices at about $530 on average for a 4-room flat. All right, and if you were to compare these with the older units just beside it beside it at block 896A in the area, you realize that the difference between those houses are about 32 years, right? So they're balanced about 67 years, and for the new clusters, you're balanced about 94 years. And the spread, the difference in terms of the two houses are actually only $100,000. Okay, so what does this mean? Meaning to say that if today a buyer comes to the market and there are these two options to buy this property, either I should get an old HDB flat balanced 67 years at $430K, or could I actually take more loan and purchase a newer flat at 94 years balance, which makes more sense to them. Obviously, they will go for the other one. All right. So why is it that then the price gap is not wider? It should be narrower, right? The reason why it's not wider is because of one thing called the valuation price, right? So actually, there is a valuation done to the property. If you were to purchase a property, for example, if I'm an owner at Tampines Terrace and I felt, hey, if Tampines Central 7 is able to go for $600K or even $590 for that matter for today prices, and I'm in a better location. Why? Because behind me I have this all parents are going after the St. Hilda's Primary School, right? It's only a small cluster in an area where there is so many matured flats. Could I also sell at the same price? Right? The answer is no, because they tried that, and what happens is that the valuation came out to be much lower. Right? So if, let's say, for example, they did keep their hands on the property at $580K or $590K, but the valuation came out to only $530K, the buyer is not going to pay $50 or $60K COV on top of this property, and therefore, if the seller is looking to sell the property, they have to change their price to meet the present valuation price. If not, they will realize that no buyers are going to buy a house. Okay? And therefore, two things could only happen. When HDB controls this, right, the prices for the new houses are now at $530, And if most buyers are going to put their money on the new houses, what happens to the older ones? Only one thing can happen is they can only sell cheaper, right? If not, the buyers are not going to be attracted to putting money for something balanced with 67 years, where they know at the end of 5 years or 10 years, if they stay there, it's going to be balanced only at 57 years. How are they going to offload this property for them? And this is going to be one of the biggest, issues or debates, not really debates, but I feel this is going to be a biggest issue for all of us Singaporeans, or even for peers for that matter, because these are all our hard-earned savings and earnings that we are spending the prime time of our life to put the money in, to fully pay this property. And right now, we all have this biggest issue of I cannot offload this property. What am I supposed to do? Okay, so this is something that you have to really think about moving forward, which makes more sense for you in terms of the HDB market. If you are looking for that first property, do take note, if you're buying a HDB BTO, do take note about the 9 years whereby before you're able to sell the property, all right? And if in the event you are looking to buy a second property, and hey, at this moment there is still no change to the regulation, right? In 2020, they still allow you to buy that HDB property BTO under a single name, having your partner as the occupier. What this really helps you is that your second property, you have a free name to invest in a second property if you do choose to keep that HDB property for the next 20 to 30 years. Okay, and for the rest of you who are living in an old HDB property, think about some ideas of what you're going to do about it. If you have enough savings and enough money for the rest of your retirement life, and you just want to continue living in that place, it's fine. But if you actually would need the money from there to be unlocked, to use that money for your golden years, you should be thinking about it today. What are some of the options available to you, and which one makes more sense for you? Okay, right? And with that, I wish you again 新年快乐. Speak to you more again next week.